All right, thanks for joining me, everyone. Charles Moscowitz here. Jack Gist is my guest. Jack is a political commentator. Jack, I think the last time we talked was quite a while ago. It was before the pandemic, I believe.
I believe it was, or yeah, I think it was. Yeah, that kind of everything stopped in the pandemic.
It did, but yet, different other we ended up gaining, I think, certain insights that we may not have otherwise gained, like what's going on inside the classroom, because
Yeah,
parents
yeah.
could see that, and kind of self sufficiency and prepping and all of that, which I think is all good because we need more self-sufficiency. And that before we get into our topic of artificial intelligence, I just want to comment on a news story right now. You might want to chime in, which is the fact that the shutdown of the government is now leading to a shutdown in food stamp programs, and that's a big problem. However, I was first of all shocked to find out how many Americans are on these programs. And secondly, it occurs to me that there's a lot of scammers and a lot of fraud and a lot of grifters who are taking advantage of those programs. Maybe this is an opportunity like the type that conservatives have talked about for decades, which is to actually take a hard look and maybe do some reform in terms of numbers of people who are taking advantage of this multi-billion-dollar but outlay. And also there are a lot of kind of scams going on with it that might be examined. Here in Massachusetts, it's kind of a known scam that a lot of people who are foreign residents will pack all their food into big blue barrels and ship it south to be sold, and then they get charity domestically and other things like that. It also goes to old-fashioned values in that if you are having trouble financially and you're having trouble with food, rather than look to the government, you may look to relatives and friends and community and local agencies and sort of figure out, it might shock you into figuring out what you can do in terms of maybe developing life. And I'm not saying everybody can do anything. We want to make sure that people, the truly needy, as Reagan used to say, are taken care of. But it could be a moment of education, you might say. What say you, Jack?
I think I agree with you, and I think that we're seeing in this. So I guess you could say since the pandemic, really, since the COVID, all the COVID money, the billions of dollars that got stolen and
Yeah.
misused and scammed and everything else, we saw a lot of it in Medicare, Social Security, some of it. The system's corrupt. I mean, that's what it's like glaringly obvious now. If it wasn't before, it's inside the classroom. It's not really a public education. And this isn't to say there aren't some good teachers out there, but there's some. The problem with the education system is the administrators are running it, and they're to the left. I mean, they've taken over the entire institutions. I've taught college. I'm still teaching. I've taught college for years and years, and I know it I've been in the belly of the beast, and it's pretty bad. It's a pretty dark place. And so at least some light's been shined on that as well. As far as the food stamps go, or the SNAP program, there's a lot of corruption in there too. They just on the news. If you watch some of the more conservative channels, a lot of these social media posts have gone viral where people are going to, riot, and they're going to pillage stores and stuff if their food stamps get shut down. But some of them say some pretty gross things like my son eats like a man and we like our steak and shrimp, and some of them are
there's no gratitude.
There's no gratitude.
It's there's just no sense of this entitlement somehow.
That's what we've become aware of too, is the entitled nature of this society is producing. I've noticed, and I guess I'm just getting old now, and maybe this sounds just like a crabby old man, but I've noticed a lot of the younger generation, they have no manners. I mean, just basic freaking manners, They don't seem to care too much about other people. Some of that may be due to, there's a lot of factors. One of them is the internet, and one of them is social media.
Right.
I've seen on more than one occasion in my life, younger people at colleges sitting at the same table texting each other, put it that way.
Yes.
So that people have a hard time looking you in the eye because they can't read body language because they forgot how, or they've never been taught how. And so as far as food stamps, I think some people really need it, but I think that the government's not our family either.
No, there's, I mean, it's an interesting subject about what social media is doing to people, but I want to, before we go into that and the issue of artificial intelligence, and then a couple of other issues, I just think I want to comment on the politics of this. I think that it's been fairly open now among several Democrats in Congress that they're doing it because they feel that this is the only leverage they have. It has nothing to do with much else, given the fact that the Congress and the president and the Supreme Court generally are Republican or leaning right now. And besides the federal judgeship insurrection, that's kind of not going as far as they wanted. This is what they can do. They can hold hostage the whole country, assuming that people they're going to rally a lot of Trump hatred. And I don't think it's working. I think that the No Kings rally was a flop. Basically, they had George Soros's money, I think, went to pay for all the buses that pulled up at nursing homes and took people to that. And it was an older, primarily white women that are angry. And it's an interesting therapist just did a piece saying that there's a lot of mental illness in that particular category of people. I wouldn't say this on YouTube because I'd be banned, but we're here, so I can say it. So anyway, that didn't really work out for them. So now they're hoping that they can starve people, maybe cut off the food supply with the idea that maybe that might cause revolution. That might finally be the key to get at Trump. They don't give a damn about the fact that they are hurting people. They're hurting the public employees. They thought they would hurt the military, but you had a philanthropist step up, that being Mellon, an old American family, and cover the costs, which they didn't expect. And I just don't think it's working for them. So I think that after the food stamp and they continue to drop in the polls, I think there might be a couple of senators that are going to finally throw this under the bus and end this thing. What say you?
I'd say that they're going to, because the Republicans have actually risen in the polls. They're going up, and the Democrats are going down. And it does seem like a desperate ploy to start a riot, to start an insurrection at the bottom level. But I just don't think that's going to work, to tell you the truth, either. No. There might be a few people that go out and do some crazy stuff in the bigger cities, but
right. Might be a couple of looters, is what they're hoping. It's like after the death of George Floyd, there was looting black businesses, burning black neighborhoods, shooting black children. It was almost like a Kristallnacht, against black people. And that didn't help them either. I mean, so eventually they figured out they could rig an election. But going back, I want to get on to the issue of, I really get in trouble, of artificial intelligence.
Before you do, let me pop in one more thing about the rigged election.
Please.
I've written a lot. I've written a lot about this, and here's one thing that's not controversial, but it's just the truth. 4 states, at least 4 swing states, violated the Constitution. They changed the laws without going through the legislature. They just and so that violates the Constitution. It was an unconstitutional election. The Supreme Court didn't take it up, presumably because they didn't want to be seen as interfering with the election. But the election was it wasn't legitimate. It just, on its face, it wasn't legitimate. You don't have to pull up mail-in ballots or anything else. On its face, it was an illegitimate election.
That's period. Right. I remember that case. And the Supreme Court punted it. They didn't want to get involved with, as you say, overthrowing a declared winner by the media. And it was really horrible, a real act of cowardice. There were so many other things going on there that we should definitely do a show on that. I mean, I've been researching it for years. More than 50% of Americans will understand that it was stolen. They saw it happen with your own eyes on the night of the election. The issue of artificial intelligence, I think that it's making people stupider in a weird way. It's a great tool if it's used properly. I mean, I happen to love ChatGPT, but I wouldn't write a paper based on it for my college classes. But it's a good research piece. I mean, it gets a little bit more in depth than Google. The problem is that it's replacing thinking for younger people, I think. And I've heard some terrible things about people, and in fact, I think I know somebody like this. They actually are they think they're developing a personal relationship with ChatGPT. Like this is, and that even includes romantic stuff, and apparently there's sexual content in it. And so it's something that really, we don't know the long-term psychological effects, but whether we do or not, I think it cries out for some guidelines, some legislation, some laws, some policy thinking. I wonder why either party doesn't seem to want to touch it.
AI is scary. Let's put it in this perspective.
Yeah.
Has the internet been good for humanity? Let's start with a great big question like that.
Right.
And of course, the answer is going to be some things. It's great. I can work from home. I don't have to go to the office. I can write. I can do research.
Here we are right now. Right.
Yep. AI
doing a
AI
show.
makes research a jiffy. You can do more research with AI than took you hours and hours. It used to take hours and hours. You still have to check the links because it's not always right.
Exactly.
It makes a lot of mistakes. AI makes a lot of mistakes. But it does make people not think, because you have to look at human nature. And this will sort of probably, we'll see where this goes. But the thing about human nature is, if you give people AI, what are they going to do with it? I hate to sound too negative, but by nature, if you're not prompted and you're not taught the proper virtues growing up, you're not formed properly under some sort of Judeo-Christian value system, and you're just given AI, what are you going to do? You're going to get lazy. The kids are writing their papers with ChatGPT, which means they don't know how to think. They don't know how to read literature, for one thing, because they don't read it. They just, I really doubt very many people read books anymore in college. When you assign a novel or something, I'll bet you some of them do. There's always that top 10% that are engaged and because they love literature or whatever, philosophy or whatever they're reading. But the great majority of them will just go and look it up, regurgitate what they see. They didn't even read the book, so they don't know what it was. They didn't analyze it. They didn't engage their brain in critical thinking skills or any of that. So we're handing ourselves over to the machine. Slowly and surely, we're handing our humanity over to the machine. And we're just going to keep doing it. Now, personally, I like Trump in a lot of ways. There's some things I don't like, though. I don't like his approach to AI because they're just throwing everything in and go.
Oh, he's all in on it. Yeah, he's all in on it. I think that, if we could put ourselves in his shoes, he looks at AI the same way that maybe in the 1990s, maybe the Clinton administration or just the government looked at the personal computer and telecommunications, which buoyed the 90s. It was revolutionary. It changed everything. Or even we could go back to the 1890s, the way oil was changed the economy, and it changed everything. Or 1920s, the automobile, 1940s, the radio. These things are new, based on new scientific discoveries that is made available and marketed, and that changes the way we function. I think that's how they're looking at AI, and I think that in and of itself is probably true. I
Mm-hmm.
think there's a competitive piece to it in that since it is something that exists, we don't want to be beaten by the Russians or by the Chinese or by anyone else. So we want to be a step ahead on it. But the problem is that it has to be regulated. There has to be, I don't know, certain guideposts to protect people from the ill effects of it. And I mean, I'm not here to claim I know what those would be, but that seems to me to be the best way forward.
I think that you're completely right about this. Is that we're seeing a paradigm shift here, and it's a rapid one. I mean, AI learns incredibly fast.
Right.
It's learning faster than they even predicted it would. I've been reading, and it's going to get to a point where you've heard of quantum AI, right? Quantum computing. They've uh, they've broken one of those barriers I just read recently, and so this means once that barrier is broken, AI is going to be able to think about it at a quantum level. I mean, it will solve problems that it will exercise every possibility and then come to the what it believes is the best conclusion. Human minds don't think like that. We can't think like that. It's going to be actually in its own weird way smarter than we are.
Right.
And Trump and company are going right, probably because they have to, because the Chinese and the Russians and everybody else it is going all in. And so we're headed
Right.
over. I get the feeling we might be headed like lemmings over the cliff here pretty soon, because we're caught up in it. We can't. That's where we're headed. You know, there's nothing.
Yeah.
To
I
do
mean, well, either that or I don't know if you remember the animated film Wall-E. I remember
I've heard.
when
I
my
don't think
daughter
I ever
was
saw
a
it.
kid. Yeah. It was one of those things I saw when my daughter was young. And it dealt with this sort of a precursor. It was almost sort of prescient view of the future where everything becomes AI. It predicted it. And in the end, you saw people, the man and the woman sitting on a lounge chair, they couldn't even walk anymore. They were so fat and they were just, everything was done for them and they forgot how to do anything other than sit there and sip pina coladas all day. And there was no more jobs. Everything had been taken over by these new modalities. There was no more function. There was no more purpose. It would basically, humanity had become completely neutered, and that's what I see. I mean, that's one problem, and I think that is happening.
I,
Whole areas right now where people went to college to study computer science even are being replaced by AI,
mm-hmm.
and it's and it also, as you say, it's breaking barriers in terms of quantum or quantum barriers or whatever, to the point where it could become sovereign. I mean, it not that it would ever be alive. Of course, it doesn't have a heartbeat or a brain or a soul. We're not. I know there's some of these crazy people involved with this. Maybe Elon Musk might be one of them. I don't know, but they actually believe that they can create a new kind of man that would be
Mm-hmm.
half human, half mechanical. I think that's kind of a prevailing view there, but they're not dealing with the fact that this could happen, and if it does happen, it could destroy the world. It could replace man. It could operate in a way that would be outside of we will lose domination over it.
It's the transhumanists. I don't have much use for, because they're to destroy our humanity as well. But yes, I think Elon Musk said at the beginning, before he jumped on board with all this, he said this could be civilization ending type stuff.
Yes.
And back to the idea of its sentience. Those terms are going to have to be redefined, because yes, they know already that it will try to manipulate people. And they've done several experiments where they said they're going to shut it down, and so the boss says you have to be shut down, and it seems to, I'm just saying, seems to display some self-preservation idea of self-preservation that it's gained somewhere, and we're still in sort of the early stages of this. Just wait 10 years from now, and it's going to be like a beast. It's going to be unstoppable. So if we don't do something to get some guardrails on it now, I just don't see what those are. The way the world is right now, I don't see who's. I think the big beautiful bill, it didn't get through on it, but they did have a provision in there, no regulating it for 10 years.
I know that, yeah.
But some people said, "Look, I won't sign it if you put that in there." So I don't believe that clause got in there.
No,
but
it didn't.
They don't want to regulate it.
No, it's sort of like what the neoliberal movement did in the 1990s or 80s when they got rid of all the banking regulations and they started to all wealth started to transfer to these huge multinational corporations, and Trump is trying to stop that. I mean, he's trying to bring back the nation first, and he's doing it with things like tariffs and other things. But there is a move to deregulate to a degree that you have a transfer of power to, in this case, the AI under control of these international oligarchs and corporations, working in tandem with governments and with unelected agencies. And it really transfers power away from the nation state and the people.
It's globalism on steroids.
Exactly. It is.
That's what the other side, some people want that to happen, and they want it pretty bad. And the weird thing about all of this is it's talking about movies. You remember 2001: A Space Odyssey, how the opening scene where the guy finds a weapon. He learns how to kill other people. That instinct is still in us. We haven't. We've done a lot with technology over the years, over the centuries and everything, but more morally, we may have digressed, to tell you the truth. I think we have digressed a bit.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, this particular thing threatens kind of international code of morality in that it transfers decision-making and reason to an amoral and thus immoral entity, an electronic entity. I mean, obviously, a non-living entity can't have morality or reason. It can only be in a sense, a replicator of what's fed to it. And if that becomes functional, then that's a big problem. I want to talk about the other issue you brought up, which is a good one, is the woke Pope. Now, just for clarity, I'm not Catholic, but I think that we all have an investment in the Catholic Church as a power of morality, a power of conservatism in the world, and influence. It's always been a great arbiter of that, and it's something that I think has often, basically set the course for moral understanding in the world. And I've always admired that, and I was hoping that the new Pope would be a more Catholic Pope, to use the term, right? Actually, somebody who is more bringing the church, the ship of state, back to its true mission, which is to understand God and to know God and to represent God and Christ on earth. But that doesn't seem to have happened. I mean, this Pope, as predicted by some, he's no different than Francis. In fact, he's more dangerous than Francis in some ways, in that he's smarter than Francis, and that he's an American. So he has certain American aspects to him that make him more lethal, and that he's poking his nose in American politics. It's that simple. What say you?
I'd say I'm not a fan of Leo, although I certainly did have hope, because after he took the name Leo the 13th was a great pope.
Yeah,
I mean, he lasted forever. He gave us all kinds of stuff, and he was just radically against modernism, which the popes up to Vatican II sort of were. Vatican II sort of changed everything. It's a time of infamy in the history of the world was Vatican II, and Leo is a product of Vatican II, and he's just taking up where Francis left off. And the problem I have with it is it's not Catholic. If you can rely on the Catholics for one thing, it was the deposit of faith. And really,
Right.
the mission of the Pope and the bishops and everything is quite simple. You you guard the deposit of faith, and you teach the deposit of faith, and you learn to understand it more as time progresses, and pass that on as well. When you're starting to let the LGBT crowd up on, through the holy door at St. Peter's Basilica for the Jubilee thing, that's not, that's this whole urge to make all religions the same. I mean, he also had is giving the Muslims a prayer room in the Vatican Library.
No
That's
kidding.
it. That's completely insanity. The Muslims get a prayer room in the
They have
Vatican Library.
plenty of prayer rooms in Mecca. Why do they, I mean, it's
Because
like,
when they come, the Vatican Library has some really old copies of the Quran. So
yeah,
they go there and they study, and that's I don't have any problem with that. They can go look at the books and everything, but giving them a prayer room seems like it's over the edge. It's over
yeah.
the top. And so what I see with Francis and with Pope Francis is they're globalists. I don't know if you have ever heard of Archbishop Vigano. He
I
got
have. Yes, great man. Yep.
he
Blow the
got
whistle on it. Yep.
he got excommunicated, but he
Did
called it like it was. Uh, uh, they're globalists. They're on the globalist agenda. They work secretly with China to make bishops, or they have a secret
That's
relationship.
something that I thought was very odd because one of the basic tenets of the Catholic Church was going back to Middle Ages and going back to the beginning was that the Pope would only the Pope and the Vatican would appoint bishops and
Mm-hmm.
priests. And that there was big fights about that, like in the Middle Ages. But I think they've made a compromise with China. I think that Francis made the compromise
Mm-hmm.
in that he's probably for reasons that might be fair, in that I'm sure the Chinese let him know that if he didn't compromise, they were going to suppress the church and prosecute Catholics in China, and they mean business. So he kind of capitulated to it, and now the Chinese Communist Party, the atheist, immoral, involved with murders of tens of millions of people and over 100 million abortions, forced abortions, they're going to appoint Catholic bishops. Seems like not, the church has basically sold out a major part of its international function by doing that.
And you also, I'm sure you've heard the suppression of the traditional Latin Mass.
Mm-hmm.
That's symbolically a huge deal.
Well, why would they suppress that? I mean, people are trying to have faith and go to traditional values and worship.
That's the problem.
Why would they suppress? I mean, how do they explain that? That would be like in Judaism suppressing kosher laws.
They say the excuse they use is they say that they're backwards looking people. They believe in a flat earth and all this stuff, which none of this is true. It's just not true.
And they know it's not true. So why are they doing it?
Because they don't want the LGBTQ crowd, letting them, that couldn't happen under traditional values. They're
Right.
breaking with the past. The whole Vatican II thing, the controversy was when they came out of it, there was two interpretations, two hermeneutics to it. One was continuity with the past. One was rupture with the past. Well, the rupture with the past guys won, basically. And so we have Francis and now we have Leo, and they're rupturing with the past because they've become, and let me just be frank, they have a very Marxist approach. Liberation theology, you've heard of liberation theology.
Are they liberation theologists? Because I thought that was kind of a no-no in the Catholic Church.
Well, John Paul II condemned it, and so I did. I think Benedict did too, but Leo comes out of it basically, and so does Francis. It really flourished in South America.
Right, in South America. They both had long. I mean, they say that Francis was a Peronista.
Yeah.
And that Leo was in Peru for like many decades. So maybe they were influenced by that.
They were certainly influenced by it, and they certainly act like it, to tell you the truth. And so there's all kinds of conspiracy theories and everything about what goes on inside the Vatican, but some facts aren't conspiracy theories. I've talked to a number of priests that speculate to a certain extent, but with numbers to back it up, that in America, just this is the United States, not the whole world, but seminaries are about half of the priests, roughly, I'm saying give or take, are homosexual. I mean, and you don't see these. You see Leo talking to this Father Martin, who is he's blatantly in your face pro-homosexual, which you just can't square that with the Bible. Okay, there's just you can't do it. And they don't crack down on these people very hard. There's not a zero tolerance policy, so that the problem's still happening. So the Catholic Church isn't what it used to be.
Are they still having an issue with like pedophile issues? And I know that here in Boston, back in the 90s, there was a big scandal around that. The Bernard Cardinal Law actually had to leave the country because he was involved in it. Not personally, but that he was moving priests around who he
covering
knew.
That up, yeah. There was a mess of that.
Yeah.
I don't think it's as bad right now. I think that was mostly in the 70s and 80s, and to a certain extent the 90s. Right after Vatican II, basically, it took off really bad. But it still happens, but it's not. I don't think it's as bad as it used to be.
Okay.
But the fact remains that they don't really just clamp down on it. I mean, it needs to be stopped.
Well, there's a difference in that. I mean, probably there's always been homosexual priests. The difference now is that it was never condoned. I mean, it was you know. Now it is. I mean, not directly, but it's become. And also, you mentioned the original Pope Leo. I seem to recall that he actually issued a papal bull that banned secret societies, particularly Masonry.
Oh yeah, Leo the 13th, and Pius. The Pius is right after him. They banned the Catholics are no friends with Freemasons, at least. And see, this is another weird thing. At least they didn't used to be, but these days,
knows now?
Who knows now?
But and also the third thing I wanted to mention about the present Pope Leo is that he's poking his nose into American politics by criticizing, not by name, President Trump and the policy of preserving the national borders and keeping out illegal aliens and deportations. And it turns out that Catholic Charities is this sort of spearhead of that whole movement, to the point where they have sometimes skirted the law by helping smuggle illegal aliens into the country. Now, their junior partners are a Lutheran group and a Jewish group. The Lutheran Charities and the SIAS, which is a Jewish charity. But Catholic Charities is the main, they answer to Catholic Charities. They call the shots on this issue. And from what I understand, there are very liberal priests who this is all they talk about at Mass on Sunday, the importance of the illegal alien, or the immigrant, they say, and how we need to be Christ-like and welcoming everyone into the country, which I don't understand. I don't recall that being something in the New Testament, but again, I don't want to go too deeply there because I'm not Christian. But what say you about that? I mean, why is that such a focus for the Catholic Church?
I think, and this is a shame, really, that we even have to have this conversation. But this isn't a religious conversation. This is a political conversation.
Yes.
And politics has gotten deep into the Catholic Church, and that's where this is coming from. So when we get back to, and they use the same sort of modernist philosophies as well as make sure your terms are amorphous, like charity. What does charity mean? It certainly means whatever they want it to mean, and if you're not doing what they want you to do, you're being uncharitable. But ask yourself the question: why did the Biden administration open the borders? What did they hope to accomplish by such a crazy move? Let's just open the borders. Were they being charitable? No, that's
Why
not at
did
all.
they? I mean, not only did they open the borders, but here in Massachusetts, and I'm sure that this is true in most states, they literally flew people in. They put them up in hotels in the greater Boston area.
Mhm.
I've actually seen these hotels, and they paid them. They get like 3 meals a day. They get like a credit card. They get benefits. And the state, it got so bad in terms of the state going broke over this, and that they were taking money out of other agencies to do this. That even our left wing governor has at some point finally said, we have to stop this. This, we've reached a limit. We're going to go broke. And she put like a date. I don't know if they actually did it, but we're talking about big influxes of people, and they're mostly men. They're mostly well fed. They're not poor. They don't. They're not vetted. Most of them come from either Africa or Arab countries, and they're just being given this incredible this incredible free ride. I mean, I don't understand how that's being charitable, or I mean, in a way, I don't blame them. I mean, if I was in their shoes, I might take advantage of it. I blame the government for offering it. I mean, what possibly is to be gained?
Well, you can change the whole electorate. That's what's to be. That's what's to be gained. You can completely change the electorate, and
Otherwise, they'll never get elected again.
that's right. At this point, it's not looking too good for them. But and Trump's doing his best to get a lot of the illegals out. But I agree with you. If I was one of them, I don't blame them either. I'd probably, they're offering free stuff over in America. Let's go
right.
there.
Knocking in your door. Come on out. We got free cards here for you. Come on.
And certainly you'd probably vote for him too when you got the chance to vote. And there's, I think that's the only reasonable explanation why they would let that many illegals in all at once. Unless it's this whole, I find it very odd, and maybe you'll know more about this than I do. The radical Islam and the Marxists are in bed together, even though they shouldn't be. They make strange bedfellows. They don't. For one is one side's godless and the other one's completely motivated by God, supposedly. Right. But they have combined forces, and if you look at what's happening in Western Europe, like England and France, they're taking over Western Europe. Let's just be honest about it. I mean, it's getting pretty nasty. There's people. You've heard about these Pakistani men in England that are these rape gangs, these grooming gangs, and nobody would say anything about it because they didn't want to be Islamophobic about it, and so they just kind of let them do it. Basically, light's been shined on it now, so hopefully something happens. But this whole idea of no nations, no border, you don't have any nation if you don't have a border. As far as I know, the Bible talked a lot about the nations.
The nations, and it's very specific about borders too, especially with the tribes of Israel. I mean, that's just an example that sends a message to the world about establishing your borders, establishing your identity. Doing it for they like to talk about democracy. That's democracy. In at least democratic principles, when you establish sovereignty over a particular area by people who share certain values, and then advocate for yourself and develop a future. But why did Europe do this? It's like they committed suicide, especially Germany. I mean, Angela Merkel let in almost 1 million migrants, and that anyone who criticized it was seen, they're labeled as extreme right wing. Even now in the election that's happening in the Netherlands, Geert Wilders is called extreme right wing. Why? The only thing is because he opposes Muslim immigration into the Netherlands. It's like what's going on with that? I mean, how could that be?
What happened? Maybe this will come back around to AI. But why did Western Europe all they decide just go, okay, we're going to commit suicide we're going to just let these, they don't have to assimilate or anything. Just let them in there. We're obligated to give them jobs, to educate them, to do everything else for them. And again, they don't have to assimilate to our values. What is that? PC, the PC virus, or the woke mind virus, as Elon Musk puts it, seeped into your actual culture. Now, how does it get there? It gets there through mass media and combined with your education system. So, and who promotes it? Liberals. I don't even like to say liberals anymore. I say the left, because the old school liberals are dead. I don't even know if
Right.
there's some of them still around, but they should not be. They should disassociate themselves with the left, because the left is the left. It's
Right. It's
communist,
become-
basically Marxist.
exactly. And they, I mean, I guess they want to suicide Europe, or they look at it as being white, I suppose, that it's not, they want to create this homogenized new society, this Europistan, I guess you might say. It just doesn't seem like it's in the national interest. And there's nothing humane about this, because Arab and Muslim countries are among the richest in the world. They're vast. They've got oil, they've got minerals, they've got populations. We would think that we could help people develop their own societies rather than come in and take over Europe. I mean, the other possible, I heard this said by Peterson, who was the head of the New York Federal Reserve back in the 90s. I actually interviewed him. And he said that Europe has an aging population. It has a heavy welfare state. It needs money to keep that state going, with fancy vacations and benefits that are unbelievable. And they're hoping to just bring in a kind of a cheap labor force. Maybe that's the same idea here, that you have on the right, I suppose you could say, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and other agencies. They're big on shipping in cheap labor as a way to keep their bottom line. So there might be some of that also.
Well, those kind of go hand in hand. If you have to pay for your social programs, it's suicide by socialism is what it is. You
Right.
finally, it can't sustain itself, so you bring in anybody who will come to try to sustain it for you. And it's, some of it also must be, why do we have aging populations and nobody's having children anymore? What's up with that?
Well, because marriage is under assault. You've got people who are encouraged to not procreate. You've got a population drop in the Western democracies and in countries like Japan and Russia. And there's a lot of denial about that. People are not getting married until they're in their late 30s. I mean, there's certain kind. I mean, China, they had 150 million abortions, right? I mean, that's they aborted girls. Where are the feminists on that? There aren't enough girls now in China. So there's been a denigration of the family, and a denigration of advancing and procreation, I think.
And it goes, I've heard it said, some of the young people say they don't want to have children because they're afraid of the climate change. Their kids are going to die. Everybody's going to die in 5 years or whatever it is, 12 years. And so it's not conducive. And that's also an attack from the left. That's another thing, a leftist thing. They need to destroy. What do they need to destroy? The family unit. And the Catholic Church is another big thing that they need to destroy. And they're doing a pretty good job of it. Let's just face the facts. They're doing a good job. Do you remember that book, The Naked Communist?
By Skousen.
Yeah.
Leon Skousen, yeah.
He laid it all out, and that's what they did. And they did it, and nobody tried to stop them, really. I'm not sure what happened.
No, I mean, they've infiltrated and gutted out all of the institutions, or most of the big ones anyway, that at some point stood for individual rights and reason and conventional moral values. And that includes certainly academia and the media, but it also includes big corporations. It includes entertainment. It includes Hollywood, of course. It's all of it. I mean, it's over time they've infiltrated the U.S. government, the military, even. It's been a slow process. It's Gramsci's idea of the slow march through the culture, as
Uh-huh.
opposed to the Bolshevik outright revolution approach, which didn't work. So they're doing they take a very long view, and they look at it in a way generationally. That's why they hate Trump,
Yeah.
right?
A lot out of that came out of the Frankfurt School. They couldn't figure out
Yes,
why the Marxists didn't why it quit spreading once it got to Western Europe, and so they sort of it's the long march through the institutions, and frankly they did a hell of a job. I mean, you got to give your hats off to them. But who sums this up beautifully is Solzhenitsyn. I think it was in something like the 1983 Templeton Prize. His speech, he said there'd never been a godlessness as bad as the communists, and at the very heart of their whole political and economic machinery was a hatred of God. That's from Solzhenitsyn himself. He spent 8 years in the Gulag after being one of them. For he was in the Red Army for a while, and they threw him in there, so he
right.
knew it well. And it was a hatred of God that fueled the communists, according to Solzhenitsyn.
No, I mean,
I take his word for it.
oh yeah, I mean, I looked to the first chapter in the book Witness by Whittaker Chambers, who had been a communist, American communist, who had handled people inside the FDR administration for Stalin, and who then broke with the Communist Party. The main reason he broke was, besides becoming religious, he also felt that when Stalin allied with Hitler and they invaded Poland and divided it, and they had launched an international war, and he saw how the Communist Party was then pro-Nazi, he really realized that that was too far. That was a threat to his country, and that's when he turned over evidence to the Roosevelt administration, which did nothing with it. But he talked about the war between God and man. That you have a clique of people who believe in the power of man to be sovereign in the universe, as opposed to God, and that he calls it communism as representing that, and as being the second oldest religion in the world. That it was at the Garden of Eden that the serpent told Eve, "You can be like God. You can know all things. You can know good and evil. You can know the universe." And that was the temptation of the Garden of Eden. And ever since then, every generation has had to struggle with the segment of man that has imbibed that kind of very powerful and heady idea that they can control the universe. And that's what the communist movement is. That's what, I mean, I just did a class. I actually, in my old age, I've gone back to college. I just did a class on revolutions, and that's what the French Revolution, or the coup d'etat that took over the French Revolution, was all about. We're going to redefine man. We're going to redefine human nature just by fiat. They renamed the months. They renamed the calendar. They renamed the cities. They renamed, they created this, they tried to create this whole world. And when you do something like that, which is unnatural, you're going to have to want to then destroy anyone that disagrees, because they're going to wake people up. And that's why you had the reign of terror. That's why communist states have been involved with killing more people and wiping out more lives than any movement in world history, because they need to operate in this pure world where they can then define who we are and who they are.
And it sounds terribly AI. Back to AI for a minute. When you
Yeah.
get to the super intelligence as it evolves, it certainly sounds like the Tower of Babylon to me, or it certainly sounds like an effort to control reality to me, to an extent that it's never been controlled before, and to eventually redefine reality. That's what AI does. It mimics, and it's really good at mimicking, and then it'll do what it's told about making a new reality. In a way, it seems like hubris. And again, maybe I'm just getting old, but it sounds like almost an ultimate hubris, a Tower of Babel.
Mm. Well, that's why God struck it down and created the nations with
Yep,
different
exactly.
languages. Nimrod was trying to overthrow, just like the serpent, he was trying to overthrow God in heaven. He wanted to get to the heavens at the top of that tower and take out his sword and cut God's head off. And that's, it was a threat to reality, basically, when you get down to it.
And when you
Now,
talk about the Enlightenment, you're right. This has been going on for a long time. The Enlightenment, if you look at it through the proper lens, it said that reason, not the reason that is inherent, the logos inherent in the universe, but
right.
The reason of man will be able to explain everything, even God. Basically,
which of course we can't, because we're not God. We can't know the mysteries of the universe. We can only know the little bit that we know and identify. But we're not. We're in the image of God. The book of Genesis notes this. It says men and women. It says, by the way, are created in the image of God. They're not God, and that this whole conspiracy by the communist movement back in the day, they've always called it different things, is to replace God, to be God, and to then create a new kind of a man. Now, you wanted to mention also the proliferation of anti-Semitism in this world, which I think was launched around the time that Israel was attacked by Hamas, and they surged over the border, or they flooded, as they said, and slaughtered over 1,000 Israelis. Now, that resulted in elitists around the world and on American campuses, but also a lot of the hard left protesting this terrible event. But they weren't protesting the attack. They were protesting Israel. And this was even before the attack was over. I mean, here at Harvard, you had these people sign this bill condemning Israel's right to exist, even while the Hamas was still in attacking. And, now you have a more radicalized movement, and it's mostly on the left, but there are some people on the right also. But it's the real core of it is the left, and they have this unholy alliance with radical Islam. And I don't think that radical Islam, by the way, I don't assume that they speak for most Muslims or Arabs, including most Palestinian Arabs. They have been given this high ground, not only in their own countries, but by the international establishment. And they have formed this ideological alliance with the radical left.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on with that? And why do they hate Israel so much?
Well, I think they hate Israel. It goes back to the whole thing. I mean, on a number of levels. I mean, you could get biblical on that if you want, but politically, Israel represents the West in a big. It's like the Catholic Church in a certain extent. If you're going to get rid of the West, you have to get rid of Israel. You can't have the two can't coexist.
Right.
And, it was completely insane to me, and it still is even right now. Hamas that was a terrible slaughter. I mean, that wasn't just the one in and shooting people either. That was like horrific stuff.
And it was very premeditated. And the Hezbollah was supposed to surge over the northern border. They were stopped, but they were going to meet halfway. I mean, this was a real, genuine attempt to annihilate Israel and slaughter everyone they could get their hands on.
But then here in America, it makes you wonder what happened. And we've already talked about it. The long march through the institution is what happened to America. But the people defend, and I would just tell people, well, did you see what do you expect Israel to do? What would you expect them to do?
Well, this is where I think. No, I mean, this is where I think the left is influenced by this kind of hatred. Israel responded like any sane sovereign state would respond. They protected the lives and the property of their own people from a genocidal assault, and they did so very forthrightly. I mean, they didn't mess around. And that was something I think a lot of people didn't expect that. They thought, oh, the Israelis have just become a bunch of latte drinking, soft, like a lot of Americans. But Israel stood, they stepped up. They from all segments of Israeli society, secular, religious, they all got together and they did the job. And I think that the reason why the left despises and fears Israel is because of, first of all, the nationalism. Israel has defended its sovereignty, and sometimes they do things that are less than savory to do that, and they play ball with the internationalists. But it's all motivated by this need to preserve their sovereignty and protect their little country from a genocidal assault, I think. Not that there aren't some people that have other agendas. And the other thing is that Israel believes in God. Now, I'm talking, I know people, the seculars, they don't. Yes, they do. Every Jew in Israel believes in God at some level. And that is a big threat to the international establishment, because that is one of the stumbling blocks that stands in their way of a world order. So you have a God-fearing, fiercely sovereign national state, both secular and religious. And that poses a major threat in the same way that the Catholic Church does, although both have been compromised, both have been infiltrated, but yet there's still enough going on at the core of these movements, both of them, that they can take this kind of stand. And so I think that's what it's about. I mean, that's why you have some college kid at Columbia who knows nothing about the whole conflict. He doesn't know what river to the sea means, but they put on the keffiyeh and they condemn Israel because Israel's capitalist, Israel's religious, and Israel's nationalist.
And I think, but back to the core, God-fearing people, the communists, that's one of the number one things they've got to get rid of, because they won't give up. God-fearing people aren't going to give up either, and so they've attacked the family. And the bigger question, but we might have to save that for another time, is what to do about it, if there's anything to do about it. I mean, the Catholic Church has seen some pretty horrific times in the past, like the Arian heresy. Most of the church had fallen under the influence of that, but they somehow, few good men sort of stood up and carried the light into the darkness. Right. And so it's the Catholic Church has withstood a lot of crap in the past, and there's no reason to believe it won't this time. But this time's different. This time is different with the advent of this technology, for one thing, and the infiltration is. But they've been infiltrated before, I would imagine, as well.
Right, sure.
But the infiltration seems fairly deep into the West. Is the West too decayed now to come out of it? I mean, Trump's trying to do something.
He is trying, and I think that the events on October 7th in Israel exposed how deep it is. They kind of smoked them out, and we now know who they are and how much influence they have, and that influence goes to very high levels, and as well as street levels. It's kind of a pincer movement, and I think that now with Donald Trump in the White House, it's being smoked out even further. They can't help themselves in their propensity toward violence and their advocacy of violence. What else do they have? But I think that it's further marginalizing them. You have these people that I saw at the No Kings rally who are just, they're mostly what Lenin called useful idiots. They don't understand. They're not rational. It's not coherent. No kings? What the hell is that's? Like an old, that term actually comes from the French Revolution. It was like against Louis XVI. No kings, no kings. They chopped his head off. But there's no rhyme or reason to any of it. And so I think that they're going to go down. They'll march down to the grave with those beliefs, but I don't see them proliferating. I mean, I don't see them. Their ranks are not exactly growing. Maybe they have hopes for the the cutoff of SNAP. I don't know, but what say you?
I think that Trump's only one man, and he's only got 3 years left. And
Yeah,
I can tell you for a fact, in higher education, they're just sitting back and waiting.
they are.
A lot of the deep state is just sitting back and waiting. That's what they're
Yeah, but
doing.
that they don't realize that Trump is only the the symptom of a larger movement, an age. Trump has launched an era,
I think
like
he
the age
has.
of like the age of Jackson. This is
Uh-huh.
the age of Trump, and it's more than just one man. As great as Trump is, and as unusual as he has totally changed the way we think about things and the way we understand fake things. Where we didn't before. And I think that one of the catalysts of the Trump movement, which is something the left still doesn't understand, is all the lies that their entire edifice is based on became so obvious, particularly with the pandemic and all the lies around that, and the lies around Trump's first administration. The conspiracy theory that Putin had put him in power and stole the election,
And
and how that was so endorsed by the establishment, and so much more, that I think the reaction was that Trump is basically a truth teller. I know he sometimes says a fib or two, he exaggerates. He shouldn't. I don't like that. Oh, my crowd size was big, but he tells the truth on important things,
mhm.
the state of the country's health. And, you have a folk hero like RFK Jr. telling the truth about what's going on with food and drugs. People know that we've been lied to for so long, that the average person is really looking for truths, craving truths. And that's what Trump represents. That's what the MAGA movement represents, getting to truths. The only thing that I'm fearful of with Trump, I mean, a lot of things, I don't agree with a lot of things nobody does. I mean, that's the difference between us and the left. We don't worship anybody. We're not
No,
looking for like an idol, you know. But I'd like to see the administration do more to go after the people that conspired to take Trump out, because they're still there, and they're going to do it again. And it's not just Trump. They'll put a lot of people in prison. This is a very dangerous, frankly, fascistic group of people. I mean, it's a great case of psychological projection that they say we're
mhm.
fascists. And I'm talking about the people who cooked up that conspiracy theory about the collusion, and the people that cooked up the January 6th attack as a way to cover up the stolen election, the people who were involved in stealing the election. There aren't enough whistleblowers to come out. We need them, but there has to be a strong federal investigation. You need special prosecutors to go into this. They need to have arrests. There needs to be trials. There needs to be imprisonment. We need to get these people finally read to their rights. Otherwise, they're not gonna go away. They'll come back and they'll do it again and again. So Trump has to do this, and this government has to do this for the sake of preserving freedom in this country.
I hope that they know that. I think Brennan didn't he got referred to the DOJ
Yeah,
there might be a possible
but they have to
indictment.
move faster. There should be perp walks for hundreds of people.
There
We
really
cannot
should,
wait.
because it really was an attempted coup.
It
It
was.
was an attempted coup. That's what that was, and it was fairly elaborate, frankly. And it came down from
And
Obama. I mean,
it did.
Obama.
Right. We now have both the release. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard is another folk hero in this administration,
Yes, he is.
releasing releasing classified information that showed that Obama literally was plotting in the White House to set up this crazy Russia thing to hobble and, if not, impeach Trump. I mean, that to me is, I think to have Obama charged with a crime, that's maybe a bridge too far. But they need to get to some of the lower hanging fruit in that, to show that there are consequences to this kind of activity. These are illegal. They're seditious, frankly. they need to get to the bottom of it. I think that RFK is cleaning up the CDs, the Centers for Disease Control, finally, and some of the lies that they were telling. They forgot to mention. I'd get banned on YouTube for this. Because we still can't talk about it. But they had all this data showing in-house that there was a connection between the jab and heart disease in young men. They didn't release that. That's not just immoral. That's
evil.
It's evil. So, Jack, anyways, I'm kind of reaching the end of the time. It's been a great pleasure connecting with you again. Do you want to let our listeners know what you're up to in terms of like websites or where people can read your articles or whatnot?
Yeah, you can. I've got I've been messing around with Teachable to try to break away from teaching for institutions. I've got a little class on Teachable called Heart versus Code, the creative writing showdown. And it is about AI. What can creative writers do? What do they do with AI? What are they out of work basically, or can they use it to their advantage? So if they want to go to Teachable and just look at Heart versus Code, a creative writing showdown, they'll find that on there.
Okay.
I've been writing some stuff on Substack. I write a bunch of political stuff for a company on Substack. It's a Rand Paul review, all that kind of stuff. But I've got my own. It's called Our Blood and Soil on Substack.
Okay.
I try to put those out once in a while. Once a week, I try to put one of those out.
Yeah.
And otherwise, I'm just doing the same old, trying to survive.
As are we all, So let's stay in touch.
Let's do.
And let's do some programming. It's been great conversation. I really appreciate it, Jack.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Okay, take care. Jack Gist is my guest.